Good evening. This is Bob Yaris, President of the Casa De Oro Alliance. I want to welcome everybody. But before we get started, knowing that sometimes people have technical difficulties logging on, that's been my experience with people trying to figure out Zoom or Facebook connections. I'm going to wait a few minutes and give people an opportunity to answer more or ask more questions for our two guest speakers tonight. And also take a look, if you want to, at our website or our Facebook page. But we'll start in a few seconds here as people get comfortable with the connection. We're doing this because our website and our Facebook page indicated that the community wants to continue to have meetings. Well, obviously being shut down, we cannot do that person to person as we've done that in the past. So fortunately, we have a gentleman working with us who's our media co-chair and responsible for much of this tonight, and we appreciate Dustin Bennett's work setting us up. Otherwise, yours truly probably could have taken a year and not have done this tonight. So I appreciate that. So we welcome you all, thank you all, and want you to know that the Alliance continues to move forward with its objectives to revitalize and make Casa De Oro a healthier and safer community. Pardon me. And what we are going to do tonight is go through a battery of questions that have been submitted by our board and yours truly to our two guest speakers, who I will introduce in a few moments. If we run out of time and you still have some questions that go unanswered, please feel free to submit those to our website or our Facebook page, and we'll be sure to answer them in the near future. I also want to bring you up to date with just a couple of topics that we have discussed in the past, and it's pretty exciting news for all of us, even though we have been literally shut down from a lot of our face-to-face communication with the principals in the county. Fortunately, through the efforts of Supervisor Diane Jacob, we have continued to meet with her every 90 days, and I will give you some updates. Foremost is the library. The commitment that Diane made a few years ago to put over $20 million of a facility somewhere in Casa De Oro is coming to fruition. The La Mesa Spring Valley School Board has in the hands of the attorneys of the county right now the lease agreement to lease approximately 12 acres behind La Mesa Spring Valley School, the La Mesa Spring Valley Academy. And we will locate the library there with the possibility of a Boys and Girls Club or a teen center. So the La Mesa Spring Valley attorneys have put together, school board attorneys have put together this lease agreement that the county is looking at right now. It should go to both boards within the next 30 to 60 days for approval, and then we can move forward with other developments related to that library, which we will alert you to, get you involved with as we go forward with design, etc., etc. As you may or may not know, there is a Friends of the Casa De Oro Library, a growing organization that will be participating in what this library looks like in the future. For those of you that are interested in the bus benches, we do have the county approving the location of 2 more covered bus benches supplied by MTS. The county is going to pour the concrete to make this possible. MTS will come in and locate those benches at the high ridership locations along Campo Road, and that hopefully will be done in the next 45 days. Estrella Park is always a topic of conversation. Some of us that have lived in this area for many, many years know that this Estrella Park has been on the agenda for maybe 30 to 40 years. There are bulldozers down there now. There are many team members from the contractors working on Estrella Park. And my contact with the county suggests that that will be done in the late fall of this year. So stay tuned for developments on that. Sandag. As many of you know who have come to prior meetings, the Casa De Oro Alliance received a $500,000 Sandag grant to take a look at revitalizing the business corridor here in Casa De Oro, look at rezoning, etc. and we are moving through 3 phases to that project being completed. We will find more opportunity for the community, business owners, landlords to participate in the discussions as we move forward. The Alliance has demanded that kind of inclusion and transparency as we take a look at accomplishing this grant. The Alliance has also decided, based upon some input and requests from our supervisor, to submit what they call a neighborhood reinvestment grant. That grant at the end of the day will probably be about $100,000. That will go to upgrade and revitalize the corner with new landscaping and new signage on Kenwood and Campo Road. Most of that around the State Farm building and across the street on county setback property down the slope from Gladley's. So we are working on that grant being submitted here in the next 10 days. We're very optimistic that we will receive that money and be working with a landscape contractor to revitalize with new landscaping and new signage the corner of Kenwood and Campo Road. As many of you have noticed, the sidewalk and the curb was done by the county here in the last few weeks. When that was done, we have 2 investors, private business owners in Casa De Oro who have pledged significant dollars to help support the grant to make this happen, to make this quote-unquote the gateway to Casa De Oro and revitalize that and re-landscape that corner. So that's pretty much the updates that I have for you tonight. Things are moving forward. We're optimistic. We planted a lot of seeds in the last 3 or 4 years that are coming to fruition. And our board and our advisory council is committed to completing what we've set out to do here in Casa De Oro. So without further ado, I'd like to thank and introduce our 2 guest speakers tonight. The format will be, I have a list of questions. I will rotate 3 questions back and forth to each one of the presenters, and then we will go from there. If you continue to have questions, we will try to integrate those questions into the list of questions we have before us. I don't know if you can see the 2 gentlemen. The first one I'd like to introduce is Lieutenant Joel Stranger. And frankly, he is no stranger to the police of San Diego. He's had many, many, many years. I believe it's over 30 years on the force. Is that right, Lieutenant?
Just about coming up on 30.
Okay, and we're fortunate that Lieutenant has been reassigned to Rancho San Diego recently. I had the opportunity and pleasure to meet him recently to find out if he was up to speed with what the Alliance was doing and receive his commitment to supporting our efforts here in Casa De Oro to make it a safer community. And he will start the Q&A in just a moment. To his right, in front of you, is Joe Valencia. Joe Valencia works with the Department of Planning Development Services, PDS, and Joel has been an angel for Casa De Oro. Joe has the responsibility of identifying those illegal dispensaries, summoning the dispensaries, providing them with the administrative letters towards the appeal process. He will explain that whole methodology in a few moments. And we are also fortunate to have Joe with us tonight. So we have Joe Valencia, who will address the dispensary questions and answers, and Lieutenant Joel Stranger from the Rancho San Diego Police Department. So without further ado, let's start. And these have no order of importance or relevance to all of us, except these are what came in as we developed this whole scenario. Number 1, let's go with Lieutenant Joel Stranger, okay? Please share the reasons for the majority of calls to service in Casa De Oro.
Okay, I talked to our crime analyst and had to run some stats for that question. What we did was we ran it from January 2018 till current, and I'm going to give you the top 5 calls in order of most going downward to least. So these are calls. These don't include deputy-initiated activity. These only include radio calls for service, and then I'll also touch on the deputy-initiated activity. The number 1 call is suspicious persons. So that's when anybody in Casa De Oro calls in a person that they think is suspicious for one reason or another, we would respond. The second most common is a welfare check. When somebody's concerned about somebody's welfare, it can be in a residence or a business. That actually was number 2 and only off by a couple. Number 3 is residential audible burglary alarms. Very common call. As you know, the majority of these turn out to be false alarms, and that's why there's such a high call volume for that. But that is number 3 of our calls. Number 4 would be any type of disturbance, argument other than family. So, that could be anything: party, noise, arguments that aren't family related. And then disturbance family fills in for number 5. When we plug in included deputy initiated activity into this, that changed it a little bit. The number 1 thing overall was extra patrols. And that's when deputies go somewhere just to check on something on their own. It can be a request by somebody. A business is having problems, or a neighbor's out of town, or the deputy just knows a hot spot. It can be many things, but that was number 1 when we included deputy initiated activity. Number 2, and that was double the next one. That's at 1,598 since January 18th, where the next one down is traffic stops at 738. Number 3, when we included the deputy initiated activities, is welfare checks again. So now we're getting back to where it crosses over with the regular calls for service. And then suspicious persons and burglary residential audibles. Those are the top 5 in those 2 categories.
And so the follow-up question to that, Lieutenant, is: has the call for services increased or decreased since COVID-19?
So again, I had my analysts look at this, and we learned some interesting facts. And we did it just for Casa De Oro, not countywide or anything. So this is specific to Casa De Oro. Right initially, when it kicked in early March, calls for service dropped off severely. But that only lasted for a brief time. I think that was probably the shock of everybody getting into the quarantine, et cetera, like that. Then they kind of picked up, and actually in later March and early April, they actually spiked compared to other years. But that can be attributed to because of the public health orders. We had a lot of calls of disturbances related to COVID, such as people not wearing masks or having gatherings. So those calls really went up for those few months there. Now they've just kind of leveled out, and they're actually about the same they have been in prior years right now. So we're back to kind of normal.
Okay. I'm going to skip down to the next question, if you don't mind, Lieutenant. Is there still organized gang crime in San Diego?
Well, the question was CDO here. I mean, there's organized crime everywhere. Specific to Casa De Oro, I'm not currently aware of any problems or major organized groups.
Your predecessor pointed out that some of the graffiti might have suggested it was gang related or gang based.
Majority of the graffiti usually we're seeing nowadays, several years ago, like when I worked patrol out there, it was, but now it's more changed to taggers, which aren't necessarily a gang exactly. They don't participate in more organized crimes. They just participate in territory and like putting up their tag. So I'm going to disagree with what he said a little bit. Mostly what we see is from taggers and juveniles.
So the obvious question then for our members here is the crime rate in this particular region, this zip code, 91977 and 78, unusually high or low compared to Spring Valley, El Cajon, adjacent communities?
I didn't pull those stats specifically. I would have to look at it. But I mean, just from my own knowledge, as you mentioned, I worked out here a long time. I worked out here over 16 years. So I am familiar with the area. I mean, my assessment would be it's definitely lower than like Spring Valley.
Got it. Good.
No question.
Okay, thanks. We'll be back to you in a few moments. We'd like to get over to Joe Valencia. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Why don't you just start out by just sharing with us briefly what your role is here in terms of the whole dispensary issue and marijuana dispensary issues in Casa De Oro?
All right. So what I do for codes, my primary job right now is the unlicensed marijuana dispensaries. So what we try to do with codes is we listen to community, we get complaints, citizens will call us in. I'll drive by, maybe see a dispensary open, or I also work with the sheriffs. They'll let me know. And we share information back and forth as to new dispensaries, different trends, where they're showing up. Like you also just sent me one about the new one right there by the Albertsons. So that's what I try to do, is get the information out, go to the dispensaries, start my investigations, and start the process to get them going, and so we can get them out as soon as we can.
So share with us the process and procedure once you have identified one of these illegal dispensaries. What are the steps that are taken prior to closing?
So what we do is every time we get a dispensary, they're going to be getting notices. So they need to know what their violation is. So we issue them a notice, an administrative warning letter, which outlines the violation, which in this case is the unpermitted marijuana dispensary, and also the lack of having a basically called an operating permit. Since they can't get one, there's no permit allowed, and there's no marijuana dispensaries allowed. All of them are already out of compliance. So they get their administrative warning. They also receive a notice of cease and desist and pending civil penalties. So the pending civil penalties, it tells them right then if this all goes to the property owner. The property owner, if you have a violation on your property, we give them a certain amount of time to get rid of the problem. And if they don't, they're also subject to $1,000 a day civil penalty up to $50,000. And that's also to include possible citations, which could total out around $12,000 for citations itself. They also receive a notice of abatement. What that notice of abatement tells them is they have 7 days to stop the action, or they're subject to being abated. When we issue the abatement notice, that also allows them their due process, and that's when they can file the appeal. The appeal, we have a hearing officer, various hearing officers. We present our case, various evidence. Either I might have found items in the internet, the reader. We used to find things in weed maps, pictures that I've taken, certain things of that item. So we present those to the hearing officer. Just to let you know, I've had approximately 80 hearings, and I've never lost one. It's pretty hard for them to not to deny that there is a dispensary there.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to that perfect batting average in a minute, Joe. So from the time you've identified them to the time you begin the administrative process, when do they first start to receive notice for the fine, the $1,000 fine?
They get a notice right in the beginning. We tell them if you don't stop, this goes with the property, and if you don't stop, you're subject to these fines.
Okay.
So that starts from day one. So
So-
we can issue them. Like I said, we don't have to wait for the whole 50 days. I've already issued cites or civil penalties to some of the dispensaries already. We start them out at 10,000 to see if maybe that catches their attention. If it doesn't, then we increase it to another 15,000. So then the final one, they'll get another one for 25,000. So they may get 3 series, but it'll total up to no more than $50,000.
So in your perfect record of 80 and 0, I'm sure those fines have added up. Does the county eventually see those fines being paid?
Yes, sir. Actually, we do.
You do.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So tell us what happens at the end of the day with those 80 dispensaries that have shut down. What happens to the landlord? What message is conveyed to the landlord?
Well, various things can happen. If we have to actually do an abatement, I do abatements along with the sheriffs. We each get a warrant. My abatement notice also allows me to board up their building. If they have serious safety violations, we also pull the electricity off the property. We'll have the meter removed. In order to get their meter removed or returned, and this is where the property owner, it gets in more this way, is in order to get your meter returned, you have to put the property back into compliance. So not only do you have to fix the dispensary, if you've added walls or anything of that nature, if you also have a bunch of garbage and trash on your property, all those vehicles that you're not supposed to have, all that has to be taken care of. If they've added on additional rooms, all that's going to have to be taken care of. The property has to go back into compliance before they're going to be allowed to have their electricity turned on. One of the requirements is they'll have to also submit a tenant improvement permit. Some of the dispensaries, they haven't had a legal tenant in a few years. So in order to get their electric back, they also have to submit the tenant improvement to tell the county what it is that they're actually going to put in there. Is it going to be an office, whatever the landlord chooses to use, but they're going to give us in writing. They got to file for the permit in order to get the lights turned back on.
Very good. One follow up to that, Joe. We noticed a couple of years ago, next to Valley Farms on Bancroft and Campo Road, when they shut one of those down, they boarded up the entrance. Why do some get boarded up and some don't?
So some of them get boarded up because we've gone through the whole hearing process. The dispensary, they found out that they didn't win the hearing. They decided to ignore the hearing officer's recommendation to abate the property. So then that's when we come in and abate it. And so if we have to abate it, then I can get the warrant so I can board the building up. If I don't, the sheriffs also will sign a warrant and we'll go in there together. Unfortunately, on some of these, I can't board up, but I can still pull the power on them because of the violations that they have.
Good. We'll be back to you in a minute, Joe.
Yes.
Thank you. Lieutenant, what is your role? What is the sheriff's department's role in closing the dispensaries, identifying the dispensaries, the entire process?
Right. So our role is slightly different than Joe's. Like Joe said, we work closely together. We share information like crazy, but our roles are different. Our role as sheriffs in general is to enforce criminal law. So our role is to handle criminal law. Now, as we know, the law changed regarding marijuana a little while ago, and that's what makes these things very hard to handle right now, because in California, marijuana and selling it is not necessarily legal on its own. So they're treated as a illegal business, basically, and that's why Joe is so involved, because it's more of an administrative process. Now, there are laws that are being violated, and that's where we get involved. As Joe mentioned, they shut down one, we can board up one, we can hit that property owner, but lately you notice they just moved next door down the street and they're open again even the very next day, which has recently happened to us. So that's the goal we're working on now, is we're trying to work more on the criminal angle so we can stop them permanently and not just keep whacking a mole per se. In the past, we've had a little bit of, because of all these laws and being so in flux throughout the state, because it's actually, federally, it's still technically a crime, but the state of California made it not. The district attorney's office early on was willing to assist us in prosecuting through on some of these cases and stuff. That has since changed. We have them on board with us now. We are working together very good and very closely, and there's going to be some changes in that. When COVID started, so primarily the work we do on CST, as you can tell just from Joe's description, it's the same on our side, is very time intensive. Patrol deputies absolutely don't have time to work on this. So we have a team at the Rancho San Diego station called the Crime Suppression Team. They are technically patrol deputies, but we pull them off of patrol, off of radio calls. They go to training, they train in this stuff, they gain expertise. Now, dispensaries aren't technically their only job, but lately that has been their primary job. When COVID started, we had staffing issues and we had to come up with own things to protect our staff. So they were temporarily redeployed to patrol. Unfortunately, during that time, we went from 4 or 5 dispensaries to about 13. Once we got to that level and started getting the rise in complaints and stuff, I pulled them back to their job. That is now pretty much the only thing they're working on. They're working on it day and night. Like I said, working very good with Joe and other entities. It's their number one project. But as I mentioned, the criminal aspect is what we're trying to increase so we can shut them down permanently.
Got it.
So now we're trying slightly different approaches. Some of the stuff, unfortunately, police work requires secrecy, and I can't share all the details. But we are working on that. I think we're going to see a much better permanent effect. The problem is the processes that we're working on are going to be a little more timely. So it might take us a little longer to get the ones that are open shut down now, but they won't reopen. Whereas if now, we might be able to go do that search warrant tomorrow, but they're going to open up right next door, which has just happened to us twice.
Pardon me, Joe, when you say they won't reopen, does that mean that the landlord will not be able to lease to a different dispensary owner, or does that mean that guy that you just closed up won't be able to reopen in this area?
So it could be either or. The dispensary owner, not the property owner, is obviously the slightly easier one. It depends on the property owner. It depends on if he's done it before and if we can prove he's gotten those notices and understands what was going on in his property, and if he was part of the criminal enterprise or not. So I'm going to say it's going to be both on those. It depends on that relationship exactly. Well, the property owners are a little harder to get criminally than the dispensary owners, but that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So it's more the first thing you said. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be criminal charges against the owners and the employees that won't allow them to go back into business again. That's going to be the ultimate goal.
Can you explain to us what the potential criminal charges will be? Is it more than a perceived hand slap, or is it going to hurt?
Again, it depends individually on all the circumstances. As you know, laws have a list of elements that we have to meet and
Okay,
stuff. It could be anything from the unlawful, running an unlawful business, to sales, cultivation of marijuana, to organized crime and racketeering, if that be the case.
got it.
Like I
Got
said,
it.
we don't believe each single dispensary is its own entity. Some of these
Right.
got to be connected.
Right. Well, we have a sense here in this community that it is very connected, and we've been told by law enforcement in the past that it's highly connected. Okay. So, what I hear you saying, Lieutenant, is that if we can identify that this is a network that's connected somehow, either by blood or name, that eventually you'll be able to drive this network out of this community.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yep. Not drive
Now,
them out. My goal is to put them in prison, but that will get them out of the community. So yes.
so for either one of you, from the time it's identified, if things go well, how long does the process take before you shut them down on average?
On our end, again, because we're trying to do the longer term effect, it's going to really vary on the circumstances.
Right?
If the intelligence shows this is a single one, we know the player, there's not a whole bunch of people to go after and stuff, it could be as early as a month or two. If they're massively connected and we're running into a string, they own 15 of them, and we find out where they're getting the product from and all that, I mean, that could drag out
Got
many
it.
months up to a year. It's
So
whatever it takes.
best case one more time would be how many months? Best case.
I'd say the best case would be at least a month or two.
Oh, great. And this is a question that we didn't share with you before tonight, Lieutenant. Can you share any data on crime related to dispensaries in our region?
Again, I didn't pull the stats for that. If you'd have asked me, I could have got the specific stats. Just from my knowledge of working there, we don't get a lot of radio calls directly related to it. So I think part of that might be, and I think that's in a question coming up later, I think maybe part of the community has almost, in a sense, accepted them and don't call us or feel bad to call us because we're too busy. And that's what we'll talk about when we get down to how can we be supported.
Yeah.
But I think that's the cause of it. But in the specific Casa De Oro, we get complaints about them, but I don't get criminal calls very often.
Okay, very good, very good. So can you both share with us in, let's say, the last 24 months, how many have been shut down in Casa De Oro?
I can tell you that as of June, actually I wrote it right here. As of June of last year, we've shut down approximately 53 different dispensaries. In Casa de Oro, I don't have it broke down quite
either
that much, but about, I would say probably in the last year, around 10.
That's
10.
fair.
Yeah, yeah. And in those 10, Joe, did most of them get to the $50,000 threshold?
Not all of them. Some of them actually went out a little quicker than others, but they're pretty much all getting the 50,000. They're all going to get something. If they were in business for 20 days, then they'll get $20,000.
Okay. But we all
And
know
Bob, I know you know this, but I think it's important when we're talking about these fees that they're paying.
Sure.
They don't care. They make
Yeah,
more than
right.
that, and they don't care. That's why I think our side of it, the criminal law side, is going to be
Right.
more important. They set the money aside in their business plan to pay those fees. They don't care a bit.
Yeah. Well, we've heard, and this is second, third hand information, I don't have this verified, that they'll walk into a landlord and offer them 6 months rent in cash,
I've heard the same.
right? And if that's 60,000, so be it, because they figured out how much they're going to make in 6
Right.
months, and they're still making a profit.
Correct.
So, Joe, the ones that are currently open, where are they in the process overall? Are they in the appeal process right now?
Yes, they're all in the appeal process. The only one that isn't right now is that new one that you were telling me about.
Okay.
Because that one's brand new. So all the other ones are still in the appeal process. And now, because of the coronavirus, we weren't having hearings as we used to. So now we're just starting to go back on video type hearings, because we've had people they were set up back as of March, but because we couldn't do them, so now we're trying to do them. So like today I had one. I'll have 3 more next week. Actually, I had 3 this week, and I'll have 3 more next week. So right now I'm getting tied up with a lot of the hearings.
Okay, so from your experience, which is rich in this area, here we are in July. Do you think we'll see some activity in terms of shutting them down by the end of August, the majority of them?
I don't know about the majority of them, but you're going to get some shut down. There's some
Yeah,
that are already shutting down on their own.
they
Like I
are.
said, once they get their notice, one in particular, there's one that was on in Spring Valley itself. Um, it was a family issue, and the family finally got together and they kicked the dispensary out. They were only open for about 4 weeks, but they actually got them out. So it just depends. Some dispensaries, they know the game. They've been doing this for a while, so they know how to play it.
So last question for till we switch back to Lieutenant Joe. Is there any unique challenges for your department and you personally regarding the dispensaries in our area in Casa De Oro?
Just like you were saying, the whack-a-mole aspect of it. Uh, we put them out of one, they'll move next door. They're I've already heard that they usually they'll set up a shop, and then they'll already set up a contingency location for when that one shuts down or they got to move. They're already ready to go into another one
Yeah.
within days,
And
if
that we
not
saw
hours.
we saw that happening. Is that right, Joe? Between the tennis court and the grass doctor,
Yes, sir.
they probably had already signed a lease, knowing that they were going to get shut down during the hearing process, and they decided to move across the street.
Yes.
Yeah, aptly
And
named
it's
by
not just unique for Casa de Oro. I do
right.
the whole unincorporated county, and I find the same thing, whether it's in Vista, El Cajon, Lakeside area. It's the same deal.
So it is the same deal, Joe, but is the concentration here? It seems like the concentration along this particular business strip going to the extension of Campo Road is that we have more per square mile than a lot of other communities. Is that true or not?
That's not true. Uh,
Okay.
No.
El Cajon on Greenfield. Actually, we cleaned it up a couple of weeks ago. There was probably on just Greenfield itself. There was 5 dispensaries. There's only 2 now because we shut a bunch of
Hmm.
them down. It was got
Yeah.
rid of it. But
Yeah.
Vista on South Santa Fe, there was 4 or 5 on South Santa Fe. So
Wow.
it just depends.
All right. Switching back to you, Lieutenant. Okay. Um,
Huh?
can you share with us? There's been discussion, if I can change topics a moment, there's been discussion amongst our board and others in the Institute of Public Strategies that we should consider moving forward on an initiative to crime-free multi-housing. Okay. And I know we had a cup of coffee and we talked briefly about this. Do you want to share with the public your view is, or maybe you could start with what is an abridged version of what is the process of crime-free multi-housing, and what's your position on it?
So a very quick abridged version is it's a program that property owners of complexes can enter into with us, with the sheriff's department. And it's a partnership, and they have to follow certain guidelines, and we give them certain assistance. And that makes them easier to keep their clientele law compliant and gives them more tools to evict them if they're not. It is an absolutely excellent program. It is absolutely underutilized, in my opinion. Countywide, stats have shown time and time again when it is instituted, crimes in those specific areas go down. The problem we have with it is that it is a little bit of a process, and a lot of the property owners don't care and don't enter into it with us or don't follow through with it. But is an absolute excellent tool, and if we can get more of them in Casa De Oro on board, I think you would see a change. But we can't force people to do it. It has to be a voluntary program, so I think that's where the problem lies.
We had this discussion with your predecessor before he left, and he was going to request of Nancy Ortiz, your crime prevention specialist, those buildings that have been through the process in Casa de Oro and are crime-free designated, whether or not they have shown any difference in calls for service since the designation. So we'd like to see if we can follow up on that in the next few months to see if there are a handful of crime-free buildings in Casa de Oro. Has it made a difference?
Okay. Yeah, I can pull those specific stats. I could probably have that even done tomorrow.
Okay,
But
no
again, I
rush.
can tell you, countywide, I'm confident they're going to show that it did make a difference, but I can get
Good.
those numbers.
All right. A question from the community is: Can the Casa De Oro sue the can Casa De Oro, wait a minute? Can the Casa De Oro sue the homeowners in a civil suit?
It's not a question for me. I'm not an attorney.
Okay. Here's another one. What is the sheriff's department doing to identify gang taggers and control the increasing number of tags we are seeing in Spring Valley?
So we have a program called Graffiti Tracker. It's basically just an app on the phone that all the deputies and community service officers have. If we receive a call, or even if we come across on our own tagging or graffiti, we document that. So what that does, this almost kind of goes along with the same process as dispensaries. Graffiti on its own and vandalism is overall a minor crime, even though it obviously disrupts the community. But if you have multiple accounts and the dollar amount to fix those adds up, it can become a felony or become very serious, and the courts do prosecute those. So what Graffiti Tracker does is it documents the type of graffiti or tag, the time and place, etc. So if we put a case together on somebody now, instead of having them one time spray painting the bus stop on Campo Road, but that exact identical tag is used 30 times throughout Casa De Oro, and it's the same tag, and we go into that person's home and find that tag on their notebooks and stuff. Now it becomes a felony, and they could actually end up in prison. So that's one program. Again, though, it goes, we have to have the information of it. So we need to encourage people to call and report those crimes. I know, again, they might be minor in the scope of things, but if we don't know, we can't document those. So please encourage everyone to call and report those so we can document them in the Graffiti Tracker program.
So the same question asks you, maybe we don't want to put you on the spot here, Lieutenant. Are you familiar with capital SV4S?
Not off the top of my head. It sounds familiar, but.
Yeah, I guess that may be a tagger that appears quite a bit here in town. I've seen that myself. Okay, the next one I think is probably more for CHP, because I've used CHP to do this myself. What can be done about the cars parking in front of fire hydrants on South Barcelona?
So without giving a complete legal lesson, just so everyone listening knows, the San Diego Sheriff's Department by law is responsible for criminal enforcement in unincorporated areas, and the California Highway Patrol is responsible technically for parking and traffic enforcement. While we can enforce those things, it's not our primary goal. So, I can talk to my patrol guys and ask them to XP it and stuff. But again, with the amount of radio calls they have, then we're taken away from more serious things. So I will pass that on, but contacting CHP would be the best bet for enforcement on that one.
Yeah, and we will post, I frequently call CHP parked cars, and within 72 hours, either they or their senior team goes out and tags the car. And if it's not moved, I believe in 72 hours, they will tow it. So there is a process in place that has worked effectively, and we'll post that answer as well on our website and Facebook page. Okay, let's get back to Joe. Joe, do you, let's see. I guess we've answered this already, but I'll bring it up again, and we hear it also from Lieutenant. When a dispensary is finally closed, what's preventing a landlord from leasing to another pot shop tenant? What's preventing that? What's in place right now, Joe, to discourage that?
Hopefully the fines that he's already been receiving, or the potential criminal aspect of it. Because like I said, if we abated it, he now has to go in and apply for all the permits. So he knows that this is what's going to happen if there's a marijuana dispensary. There's really nothing in place to stop a landlord from renting it back out, other than the threat of more punishment. But there's really nothing in place to stop somebody from leasing or renting.
Okay, so let's go back and let's rewind a minute, Joe. Let's clarify for the audience. There is a penalty process that includes fines. So from the day you start fining whomever, is the fine equivalent to the landlord as it is to the dispensary owner, or only one or the other? Could you explain that again, please? It's
typically to the landlord. We don't issue citations unless we know who we can issue them to. The dispensaries now, they don't give names. It's hard to find out who they are. So you can't issue just to an address. They have to have somebody has to be culpable. But the property owner, he owns the property. He's ultimately responsible for what happens to his property. So we issue him the documents and the fines and the penalties. Like the lieutenant is saying, or maybe it said that, yeah, these guys, they make a lot of money. They tell the landlord, we'll take care of your fines. Sometimes they
Right.
do, sometimes they don't. But it's a hit and miss with those guys. Because like I said, I don't know who runs it. Every time I show up, I either get the door locked in my face, or everybody's a volunteer and they don't know anything. Um, and
Well,
that's
Joe,
about as far as I get.
another question has just recently come in, and that is this. It seems like the fine process of up to $50,000 is not dissuading anybody from doing business in marijuana. I don't know why it was set at $50,000 limit, but has there been any discussion in your presence about increasing that to $100,000?
No, the limit is set by law, so they would actually have to be a change in that in order to increase it.
And that law, you mean within San Diego County?
I believe it's a state law. I'm not positive on that one, but it
Well, in
is.
the state, it's not illegal. So would the state be setting a limit on the
Well,
penalties?
there's a limit as to how much civil penalties we can
I
charge
got it.
someone.
Okay. So in your experience, how many years you've been doing dispensaries, Joe?
5 years.
Do you believe that the fining process has been effective to dissuade an operator from reopening?
Not necessarily an operator, but a property owner from leasing or renting renting the property back out.
To renting to a different dispensary owner a second time?
Correct.
Got it. Got it. So if I own a strip mall in Casa De Oro and there was 12 addresses, and they each had 1,000 square feet, and you shut me down, shut one of them down, is the whole building then summoned, or can I open up one at the address right next door?
So if it's the same parcel, um, the violation that I give you notes the parcel. So the parcel is in violation. So,
Okay.
and again, if you have unit, because this happened before, if you have unit one, we get you stop. Okay, when you get your fines, you decide, okay, I'll just open unit two. If it's within the same year, my process, I don't have to start all over again. We can start right up where we left off. So if you're still owed a few more tickets, then you're going to get some more tickets. Or if we still, have some civil penalty issue, we can still do that.
Got it.
It makes it quicker because I don't have to now give you new documents to file an appeal. I don't have to wait for the hearing. We can, we can go right off.
So, Joe, because some of us conjecture that the network in Casa De Oro is pretty tight in terms of ownership of dispensaries, if that is true or not true, is there anything unique about the dispensaries and how they're connected in Casa De Oro that makes your job any more difficult?
I don't think it's just unique in Casa de Oro. They play the whack-a-mole game. If you own a property, then they will either quit claim or sell it to somebody else. Then that person will have it. Once we get them out, then they'll either change it back to the same person, and they'll just keep switching back and forth, or it's just a round robin that they play. Again, these guys have been doing this for 5 years, so they catch on pretty quick.
So, what we hear both of you saying, and particularly what Joel is sharing with us tonight, is that if we move forward with some of the curtailment efforts, that eventually you will know who they are. The penalties will increase as you identify them doing it over and over again, and eventually you'll put some of them out of business. Is that the goal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime, but it's an ambitious goal, and we hope it happens. Yeah.
I hope you will.
Yeah. Let's get back to Lieutenant a minute. The question for both of you. Well, you mentioned it before, Lieutenant. I know that it's been a topic of conversation with your predecessor, but do you believe you have adequate staffing to protect Casa De Oro right now?
Absolutely. Casa De Oro is unincorporated, so the determinant of deputies is a set formula the sheriff's department used throughout the county. We're at full staff right now. So yeah, would we like more? Of course, we'd always take more, but we're definitely adequately staffed at the moment.
Good, good. We meet, as you may know or don't know, with Supervisor Diane Jacob every 90 days, more often if needed. We're there to applaud your work and recognize your good work. Is there anything we can do to help you two and your departments and or bring up in front of her to ask for additional support to reach our objectives here? Is there anything we can do initially as Casa De Oro Alliance to support either one of you, starting with Joe?
To support me like you've done, give me, if you guys see new dispensaries popping up, let me know. Um, we're more reactive at codes to to these places. So most of my cases come up from citizen complaints, telling me, okay, here's a new dispensary. Because some of these guys are getting a little better at hiding them. So by you guys telling me where these dispensaries are at, if you have other information like names of the dispensaries, who's running it, that all helps.
Good, good. Is there anything, Joe, that we need to share with Brent without mentioning the source that would help you? I mean,
No,
you you,
Brent
you
is
seem to
very,
be
very
you seem
supportive.
to be spread pretty thin. You have a support staff. Are you doing this solo?
Oh no, I have support staff. Yeah,
Okay,
I have different partners that help me because there are times where I have a hearing and we may have an abatement, so they help me out that way. They'll do inspections for me. Uh, they're very well trained. We all work together to support each other at Coach.
good, good. Same question for you, Lieutenant. Is there anything we can do in addition to what he just mentioned to support your efforts?
Yeah, no, it kind of matches. You absolutely do support us now, and just continue what you're doing. Continue to feed us information. One thing on the dispensaries, you don't necessarily have to support us on because we are moving forward with it. I think it comes up in one of your public questions here, so
No.
I might be jumping ahead a tad. But we always get asked, how come dispensaries in cities like Lemon Grove and Santee get shut down quicker, more efficiently, et cetera? The issue there is because those cities have specific ordinances on it that they can enforce, whereas the county does not. Prior to COVID, Jerry, my predecessor, and the captain and our captain met with Diane Jacobs' office to talk about what could they do, and we identified that they can have some law enacted that gives us something more we can act on sooner and quicker and with more teeth. Then COVID kicked in, and obviously everyone's efforts kind of got directed effort. We just recently recontacted her office, and we have a meeting scheduled to follow up on that on July 6th, or not 6th, I'm sorry, August 6th, I believe. So maybe when you meet with her, just mention that's important, because that will definitely help us shut down the dispensaries in Casa De Oro easier. Other than that, like I said, we have a great working relation. I know you did with Jerry, and I hope to continue that. And just always call us and keep us full of information. Encourage everybody in the alliance and all the residents of Casa De Oro is to please call us. I
Yeah,
appreciate the positive support out there and people not wanting to bother us, but this is what we do. And if we don't have the information, we can't fight the problem. So just, if you see anything, report it to us. And if it's small, so be it. But if it's something good, we might get some good info out of it and something we can do about it.
very good. We appreciate that. I want to ramp up that conversation a little bit more, what you're talking about. It has been shared with me personally that not as a member of CDO, but it came up as a member of the CDO Alliance eventually. That, and I shared this with you, Lieutenant, when we met, and I don't know if you can share any more about it, but these businesses are cash cows. They can't go to a credit union or a bank and deposit the money. And I understood factually that within the last 12 months, they raided multiple homes here in East County of people that they identify that were doing money laundering for these dispensaries. I'm not sure, I don't have that verified by any source, but is that at the end of the day another aspect that the county and the sheriff's department and you, Joe, are looking at to put a halt to this?
Absolutely. That's
Oh,
part of maybe the new angle we're taking on it that I said, unfortunately, because of the nature of the work, I can't share all the details with you, but that is absolutely something that could be a factor.
okay. Joe, a question came in. I'm not sure you have these all memorized. 10537 Campo Road. That's the service road, the extension of Campo Road that runs in front of the Jack in the Box and all the way down to the end where it dead ends, paralleling 94. Has that been identified, and is that in the appeal process, if you know?
But yeah, we identified that one a couple of months ago. Pretty much like right about when they opened up. And again, you're right, they are in the appeal process. Again, so for me, we got to wait for the appeal to happen before I can finish up my process. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to get them within the next couple of weeks.
Very good. Very good. Let's see if there's anything else that came in from our viewers. Is the sheriff's substation on Camper Road currently being staffed? And do they have a schedule down there? And like a lieutenant, your predecessor tried to do, I think he eventually accomplished, asked the deputies to park in the parking lot in front of the building and not behind. So it is a little bit impressive. Comments about that staffing of that substation, Lieutenant?
Yeah, so that facility on Campo Road, first of all, let me point out, it's not a substation. It's what we call a storefront. So it is not staffed per se. It is not open to the public. The deputies use it to do their work, at have their lunch there, to type out reports, process stuff, and it just keeps them in the area so they don't have to drive back to the station.
Okay. All right. And are they parking in front under your watch?
I think we've definitely made an improvement, not quite 100%, but definitely we see more out front. Yes, and that's being encouraged by me.
We have had multiple conversations with the owner of that strip mall. We understand at the other end where the concrete pad is, they're bringing in another restaurant. And we understood that he's going to be redoing the parking lot and the facade of that entire building once that is built. Have you received, are you on an annual, a month to month? What's the relationship that you have with your lease and that landlord?
Our central contracts handles that. I don't currently know off the top of my head.
Very good.
I know we've been there for many years. Since I was on patrol so many years ago, it's been there.
Okay, so I might have missed this. Is somebody at that substation every day or just certain days of the week?
Well,
Sorry,
again,
storefront. I stand corrected. Not a sub storefront.
There's no schedule there. They're there every day just by nature of their work, but there's no schedule per se. They just go there when they need to.
All right. And jumping around, what is the name of the graffiti tracker app that you spoke about?
It's exactly what you just said. It's actually called Graffiti Tracker. That's the official documented name. Yeah.
Very good. Let me see if there's anything else. Let's switch gears again. I think we've worked very diligently and closely with various organizations within the county to address the homelessness issue and the transients in Casa De Oro. And to our vision right now, we may have one prominent one, which is on the State Farm building on the north side of that parking lot, may or may not be on private property that we're pursuing. But behind Campo Roads, Post Office, Albertsons, all of that was a homeless mecca. That's all cleaned up, etc. So for you, Lieutenant, is the homeless issue an issue for service calls, crime, etc. in Casa De Oro?
Yeah, I mean, department wide, it's definitely an issue for us. In Casa De Oro specifically, I wouldn't say it's any worse than any of our other stations. Homeless, we could have a whole meeting on that alone. I don't think we have time to completely get into that.
Right.
The sheriff's department stance is still homelessness itself is not a crime. It's more, again, administrative issue, county issues, mental health issues, drug abuse issues. We will get involved when there is criminal activity. As you know, there's certain case laws that prevent us from enforcing certain things now that didn't used to be there and stuff. So it makes it difficult. But yeah, it's definitely not in Casa De Oro. It's definitely not like a big problem. It's not worse than Spring Valley, Lamar Park and stuff is.
So you're saying that you don't see an increase in calls for service due to the homeless issue in Casa De Oro?
I will say we do, but not to an alarming level.
Okay. Many, many years ago, I met one of the deputies, coincidentally, at the coffee shop, which is now Gladley's. And he found out what I did. And he said, Bob, one of your challenges will always be the group homes and the residents of the group homes and what effect and impact they have in Casa De Oro. Are group homes an issue for you currently right now, Lieutenant? The residents of those group homes?
They have. I mean, it goes back to when I worked patrol in Casa De Oro, 15 years ago. There are quite a few of them, and they do cause us radio calls. Yes.
Yeah. So they did. I think it was Deputy, whoever Nancy's predecessor was, upon our request, went in and looked at all their licenses, and at the time, they were all within code and compliance with the number of beds or residences per their license. But that fluctuates. They can have walk-ins tomorrow, okay?
Right.
But you're not getting additional calls for service during the virus for those group homes?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Do we have any more from the audience? I'm going to ask one last time. We're closing in on 1 hour. If there's any participants in our community who have any last minute questions, we would like to field those right now before we sign off with these two gentlemen. And I'll wait a few minutes to see if we do. I think it's been very valuable. I think you've covered all bases and questions that we've had. Um, and we appreciate that. We really do. I think, as a resident here with my wife and an owner of property for over 40 years now, 42 to be exact, we've seen the deterioration of Casa De Oro, and we've seen the rebound of Casa De Oro, I think, rather significantly in the last 2 to 3 years. Lieutenant, since you've been here before, would you support that statement, or do you think we still have a ton of work to do?
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this a little bit. So I worked patrol for about 8 years and then detectives for 8 years. And that was back starting around, I'll say 99. And then I promoted and went on to other aspects of the department and just came back to this area about a year ago. My opinion, I think Casa De Oro is a lot better than I remember it. When I worked there, it was my beat for a long time.
Right.
And I remember it being extremely busy. And I don't see that now. I think we're headed in the right direction. Of course, we can always do more work, and I think we have some work to do. But I think I've seen a definite increase in it being a better place.
To what you know about the Alliance, Lieutenant, and it continues to grow, I'm sure, over time, is there any things that we've talked about tonight, or you and I when we met, that we're overlooking as an objective, something that we should focus on to continue with our efforts collectively?
No, I think you're on the right track. I couldn't think of anything. You're
Okay.
on top of it.
Here comes a couple of more, either one of you. Do you get many calls for illegal activity in the apartments in Casa De Oro, particularly those that are south of Campo Road?
Yes, and apartments anywhere in the county are always, you're going to get more calls there just because you got more people in a tighter space. But yeah, particularly the ones you mentioned have always been a slightly higher area for us, and that's where again that crime-free multi-housing could come into play if we could get
Right.
those people on board.
Right. Another one. Again, these are all over the place in terms of topics, but will the Estrella Park have additional patrol when it's completed? Or does that lie on the community or as a neighborhood watch? I will tell you before you got here, Lieutenant, and we were going through some of the hearings, the concern was, even though Estrella Park has been on the books for many decades, that it will turn into another Lamar Park. And it'll be a drug distribution and homeless center, Mecca. And the community surrounding that park was very concerned that there would be adequate lighting and/or patrol and surveillance so that doesn't happen. Have you even discussed patrolling that park once completed?
No, we haven't discussed it. Not since I've been there. We don't provide specific patrol, to specific areas unless we're under contract or something. I mean, once it opens, we will put it out that it's open now, and I can ask my deputies to XP it and stuff, but there will not be an extra deputy added or anything to that effect to increase patrols.
Okay. And you haven't had any discussions within the department about that potential and the potential of increased crime that park would create?
Again, not since I've only taken over for Jerry. It's only been a couple of months, but no, that's not something I've had any conversations
Okay.
about yet. But definitely can as it gets closer.
I'm not sure that this is appropriate for either one of you, but it is here. How far do you consider Casa De Oro goes on a map south of 94? Does that even matter to you, that designation, Lieutenant?
Well, it does, because that's when we pull stats and stuff. I mean,
Okay.
And I know it's not far. I don't know what the actual street is, but it's not too much south of the 94, but it does go south of it a little bit.
Would you mind sharing that with us somehow in the near future?
Yeah, I can get
find that out. Okay.
Yep, I can get you a map.
Can we make the encampments illegal?
I wish we could. I don't have that ability. That's on lawmakers, and that's
the
problem now
level.
lies. Yeah, everyone's taken the stance that it's not necessarily a criminal problem. So I don't think you're going to see that, unfortunately. But obviously that would help.
Very good. I agree. Okay, well, Joe, Lieutenant Joel, I think it's been a phenomenal experience for all of us. We've got a lot of intelligence and a lot of information, and we are confident with your support that we're going to move forward in the right direction. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with as parting words or, exit words before you sign off?
Oh, for me, again, keep giving me the information. Let me know when you guys see dispensaries. I may have already seen them, but you might give me a little bit more information that I didn't have before. And so that helps out a lot.
Um, with that, Joe, is it possible, without burdening your staff, to maybe let me know so I can share it with the community when you have shut down one of them?
Sure.
Like when you shut down the tennis court, we celebrated. Okay, unfortunately, they walked across the street, but the community likes to know that because they see so many popping up. They'd like to know that the courts have shut them down, and I could share that information on our Facebook and website.
Again, and it's not just me. I mean, with the sheriffs, the tennis court one was theirs.
Uh-huh.
That's what they do. I was fortunate I was able to be there, but we help each other, so I could get SDG&E in there so that we could at least pull power on it on our end.
Well, how about this? How about at least monthly? I give either one of you a call to see if anything happened, if somebody got shut down, and then I can publicize it.
Sure.
Joel, any last parting words for the Alliance, please?
No, ditto what he said. I mean, obviously you're all here and watching because you care. Just you see something, say something, give us a call. Don't think anything's too small.
Yeah. Well, Lieutenant, welcome back to Casa De Oro. We appreciate both of your work. And Joe, keep up your batting average of 1,000. We may not be playing baseball, but you've got quite a record, Joe.
Thank you.
Hey, good night now. Committee reports, at least one, and Mike Herron from our Government Affairs Committee, who has been with the board for many years, would like to share some things. Mike, are you there?
No, Mike.
No, Mike? Okay. I hear him over here. Who's that? Oh, that's just me. Okay. I hope we've answered all your questions, community, and we're planning to do this again the third Thursday in 2 months. Give us some feedback, if you would, please, to either our Facebook page or our website, or you can contact me directly through our website. But I think this was very productive. We do have tentatively scheduled a woman from the Department of or Metropolitan Transit Service, MTS, who will join us regarding the new benches, advertising on the new benches, potential for new benches. The 2 new covered benches will be in by the time we get around to that meeting in 2 months. But we'll ask her how and what it will take to add more benches that are covered in Casa De Oro as we move forward. Let's see if there's any other comments that we overlooked here. Dusty, how about the giving? You want to talk about that real quick?
I'm sorry, the what?
The donations?
Yeah. So if you're interested in donating, we have set up a Venmo. Simply just go to Venmo.com or scan that barcode with your app, and it'll take you right to our little distribution page.
As you know, we are a nonprofit corporation in California. We're a 501c3 designated by the IRS. We do have a budget. It doesn't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of expenses. But as we grow and we have new needs that we will identify in the future, grants we will apply for, but any small or large contribution would definitely be welcome and recognized and appreciated. And again, it would be a tax deduction. So with that, again, we'll be meeting again in 2 months. The board continues to meet the second Thursday of each month this way. Hopefully with just all your comments. If we didn't, please send them in, and one of those 2 gentlemen will answer them as we go forward. I want to thank you. I know we're all dealing with different coping mechanisms here during this virus. We all hope and pray to see a vaccine by the end of this year that will allow us to get back to some form of normal. But in the meantime, wear your mask, wash your hands, be safe, keep your distancing, and thank you for your support of the Casa De Oro Alliance. Good night.